Oh, hello there. This is Mairi Sutherland. I'm a filmmaker and I work in the film industry, or attempt to. I'm doing some experimental lives on Facebook, well, not on Facebook, on YouTube, just see how things go. I've still got my Christmas tree here. I'm going to play it to take it down. It is live. And I just wanted to recap on what I said the other day because it was quite a long talk. It was 45 minutes about suicide prevention in the pandemic. And why would I do that? It's because I have accidental expertise in that because when I was a student leader in the 80s, and I was vice president of the Students' Association in an elected post. And then I started off being, first of all, the welfare officer, and then the academic affairs officer, and then the vice president. And that university of Stirling still has, is still going strong. At the time, it had the highest suicide rate in Europe. And so it was something on the minds of the people there that it needed to be sorted out, and it was always a problem for every single student leader who was there. So I had to learn pretty much a quick learning curve on why something like that would be happening and how to fix it. And so I thought I would give the benefit of my experience of that and also provide people very, very quickly with a list of things, certainly to help out in the pandemic, but it would seem that I've been looking to see if I could find the suicide rate for the pandemic last year. And as usual, it's obscure. Although organisations are hinting that the progress towards a higher rate is being indicated. Yesterday I looked at a number of papers from different obscure organisations. One of them came up with a statistic that between May and July last year, the suicide rate doubled, but it wasn't in that quoted paper. It wasn't grossly high, but it was double the amount of 2019 suicide rate for those 3 months. So it was sort of saying, and then it didn't give the scale. It was saying 435-ish, but in the pandemic last year there was 850. I need to check those figures, but obviously, and then I looked at the Samaritans, what they were saying about it, the UK organisation for people who are suicidal phone up and they speak to somebody, and they definitely said that there was a 1 in 4 increase in the number of people that were speaking to them. Whether they then went on to commit suicide, there's no figures because it's so early. But the indication is that yes, suicides have gone up, but they just don't know by how much. So that's how they're getting round it, so that they're not talking the same one way or another. Rather than go on about that, I thought I would discuss the nitty-gritty of suicide prevention. And as somebody who achieved an unusual thing or was credited with achieving it, although there was a team of people, as somebody achieved something very unusual, enough for that there to be a nomination for Scots Woman of the Year for bringing down suicide over 3 years, right? And as I said in my previous talk, that had to have been some system there, otherwise how did it happen over 3 years? And when I left, the suicide started again, right? So I wanted to give the benefit of what I discovered and what I learned about how you would prevent suicides in a mass way, because there was probably around about 2,000 students, maybe yeah, 2,000 I think tops back then, and it was one a month, and in a bad year it was three a month. Right? So you would know. Now things have improved, and I believe it's rarer for that to happen, although it would be the same as all the other suicide rates in universities in Britain, whatever that is. Again, those statistics are hard to find until they're retrospective, and they're usually 2 years later, right? So you would find statistics for 2018, but you're not going to get them from yeah. Statistics for Los Angeles was very interesting when I looked at them last year, and they are high for that city, although it was claiming it was around about 800. But those were blips up and down in a year, so it wasn't clear over how many months that was. You really want to get the monthly rate out of these people. Anyway, I digress. So the list, I thought, the other day was 11, but I thought I'd go to 12 because it's a bit longer, isn't it, for people to remember. What I discovered in suicide prevention is you need to deal with the problem and not what you regard to be the mental illness. I never regarded anybody to have a mental illness. And, I was dealing specifically with the welfare of the person. So that involved in my book the 4 things that provide heat, light, electricity, and a roof over their head. Plus also their academic course. So number 1, I would try and save the course, look at the problems and try and fix them. So I didn't ever take it from the point of view that I was discussing a mental health thing and that they had to change their brain about their problem. See what I mean? It wasn't in the brain. It was an environmental thing that was impinging upon them and needed to be fixed, right? And in that case, you go at it to fix the structure around them. So I did that. I if they were homeless, I would advocate to get them housed. If there was a financial issue and the grant hadn't come through, I'd get on and discuss it with the grant authority and try and speed them up. In those days in Britain, food banks weren't a big thing. So, they would have to be relying on goodwill from others, I think, to get through that, or try and get themselves a part-time job as well. But basically, once the academic appeal was done, that gave that person enough space to sort other things out in their life, right? So what I'm saying is it's preventable by looking at the structure of thing that's bothering that person and fix it, right? In terms of the pandemic, that's complex. I looked at it yesterday in terms of what grants can people access, particularly if they're in the film industry. And they've made it very complex as to how people would actually apply for these grants. The biggest issue being if you're self-employed and you didn't make a profit last year on your accounts in the previous years, you wouldn't be able to apply for the self-employed income support grants. And I think I was listening to the radio, and that was also pointed out by somebody who's self-employed as well regarding that. So, it's leaving people up in the air and in difficulty. So therefore, they have to start looking at other ways to solve the problems. So that's why I thought I'll be useful here, and I'll try and explain what we need to do. So once the physical things are sorted out, you're looking at grants, income streams for that person, and I do seem to remember discussing part-time jobs with them as well, or Some of the reasons that they were failing is because they had a part-time job and they were supporting themselves. So that had to become part of the academic opinion as well, obviously. So that's that one dealt with. That's your physical situation in life. If you were facing homelessness, you need to get on the phone and phone all those organisations, and then go to the support systems, which sadly in the UK, and I've probably seen in other places in the world, tend to be the churches. And in fact, as I said before, the best ones are the Christian churches, with the Baptists being that scored the highest for being the most helpful with regard to food banks. So, you're looking at all those lists of things that you have to go through. And if you didn't do that and you weren't going to approach it in that manner, then your mental health or negativity starts to creep in because you don't feel that you can action anything. Okay, so you have to take action, number one. So once you've got through that heavy number one, you would then want to start looking at support from a cognitive behavioural therapist. I did explain that quickly before in the other talk, which was 45 minutes, and most people don't have time to sit and listen. Unless they were really dealing with the issues, and I would advise that they take time to do that. I'm sort of speaking quickly, but I'm always a slow talking person, and the reason being is because I was doing suicide prevention for 3 years. I got into the habit of speaking slowly to people, because you're dealing with people who are panicking, right? They're in a situation of difficulty. So you're not going to go at them like you're a Blue Peter presenter and try and attempt to put sticky back plastic on something. So you wouldn't be going at it in a kind of silly, squeaky kind of, high level voice in a broadcasting manner. You're going at it in a very, very realistic way with people who need things to be achieved for them. So you just wouldn't do Blue Peter actions. You really are doing it in a very realistic, serious way. So that's why I got into the habit of speaking slowly, because it's soothing. And the other analogy would be this. The other community that speaks slowly and who speaks quietly is the cowboy community. And why is that? Because they're dealing with horses. Horses are their main thing. And if you're dealing with an animal that's panicking because you're shouting and bawling and jumping up and down, and you are conveying in your voice panic, or in any way being annoying, a horse will run and stampede. And if you have 4 or 5 people all behaving in that way, you will get a huge horse stampede. So people are the same as horses. You have to be treated with respect and calmly. So I learned to modulate my voice so that it never came across as a panicky kind of a voice. And through that process, people did calm down. Number 2, I would recommend, as I said, as a cognitive behavioural therapist. And the reason for that is that they are trained to train out of people and reprogram people not to have negative thoughts. So, and transform them is the important word here, into positive ones. So their counselling is transformative. They will try and say, look at the negative programming that a person has had that makes them think they're going to fail, or they fail their exams, or they fail what they're doing in life. And they're not that expensive. Private one would cost maybe about £50 for an hour. If those sessions are going to save somebody's life and they're going to help them get through suicidal feelings, the thoughts, then I'd recommend somebody helps them out with that. Waiting on a national health list for a cognitive behavioural therapist could be a long time. It could be as long as a year. But then the pandemic will be over. You hope. You pray it will be. So, I would recommend that. I'd recommend that people look into cognitive behavioural therapy for themselves. If they can't afford to get a therapist, then look into the process of cognitive behavioural therapy. There's a few things that they do. It's kind of obvious. If you have a programming as a child that made you think that you were stupid or bad, then what you're trying to do is change that voice in your head, the monkey brain, from telling you that, and quickly move on to thinking, yes, I can. Yes, I can do it. Yes, I can do it. And things like meditation help with that. But first off, a cognitive behavioural therapist would, and or reading about it or getting involved with that process. Number 3, okay, I'm trying to be quick here, is try to remove the technicalities that are holding you back in becoming self-sufficient and self-reliant. In terms of the pandemic, that would be important to be self-sufficient and self-reliant right now. So, things like that are making lists, to-do lists, things that you need to sort something out, work towards that goal. Those could be practical things. I think in the pandemic, you need to get out of the situation that it creates for yourself, which is delivery lists, waiting for things, do things in such a way, clearing things up. It takes a lot of time, all the lists of things that are asking us to do. So you need to keep doing those, but don't get those things to get in the way of your day job. You have to continue to do your day job. So tactics for being self-reliant and self-sufficient are the things that you want to get into, and that is remove technicalities to do with that if something is blocking that self-sufficiency. Right. And for each person's job, that's going to be different, but make that list. Number 4, avoid codependency relationships, which keep you in a state of, this is mostly to do with people who are addicted to things. And the list of addictions could be anything that didn't necessarily need to be drugs and alcohol. And it could be addicted to your phone, it could be addicted to social media, it could be addicted to sex, pornography or whatever. Whatever it is, you want to change that habit. And the problem is you can't change it if you're associating with other people who've got the same habit as you. Stands to reason. So there has to be a conscious effort not to associate with those people that are encouraging you to continue the drug habit, the alcoholism, your pornography, or whatever it is, your phone addiction, whatever. So that is important. Yeah, that's number 4. Number 5, remove feelings of shame that say you are not worthy. Arguably, that is the most difficult thing to actually change, and you wouldn't expect that to happen within 3 months of cognitive behavioural therapy. Either if you're learning it yourself or through a therapist or other ways. That can go deep into somebody's psyche. Why would they feel ashamed about themselves? And again, it's building the person up, making them feel confident that they can cope. And once they grasp that, then they can do it themselves. I would go into things like looking at Ayurvedic remedies for self, awareness, that you are worthy, and try and not have shame. And one of the things, again, which I'll talk about at the end, which is my last point I'm going to make, things like meditation help the person to come into the state of mind that they can start dealing with addictive things and, self-mastery. But first off, you want to recognise the shame and deal with it. Okay, point 5. 6, don't compare yourself with other people. So don't compare yourself with other course people who do better than you are. Don't compare yourself with the celebrity culture. They're big on body shape, for example. I wouldn't be having anybody deal with that, certainly right now in the pandemic. I think that, celebrity culture uses the compare system in order to elevate them so that they look better, right? But if you are in a situation where you refuse to compare yourself with that supposed success rate, then, is it successful to maintain a career about body shape and all the things that you are doing correctly, that then makes the rest of the population feel bad because they're not reaching that pinnacle of behaviour or thing, right? Then no, that's a system which is devaluing human beings because it's saying there's one successful person and the rest are failures, right? So that's not good for somebody's mental health if that is being projected all the time on social media, right? So you want to remove yourself from the compare culture, right? That's point 6. There's a lot of avoidances that have to happen if you want to look at a community. And I'm talking about communities here, because that seems to have been what the team at Stirling University achieved, was they achieved in 3 years the removal of suicide, right? So that involves avoiding certain things in order for that to come about. And one of the other things is avoid people who create the problems by compounding them. So if you have groups that are encouraging a certain type of behaviour, right? Now, obviously on social media, that would be people who are often making money out of compounding problems for people, usually like scammers, for example, or catfishers and that sort of thing. You want to be avoiding those situations and don't put yourself into, Facebook or social media situations where you would be exposed to that kind of exploitation. So you want to avoid people who create problems for you by compounding them. We all know in a community who those people are. They know who they are as well. And it's kind of obvious that you want to give that a bin stare. Okay, so that was point 7. Point number 8, trapped in bad relationships, bad environment and poverty. Well, that is a long-term thing. How can you reprogram a situation where somebody facing that doesn't automatically think of a negative thought and then moves beyond it? Well, you want to have to again think about transcendental stuff that is, transformative. That's going to, obviously, structural things that can change the poverty is good, and you would really want that person to be fighting it. Right off at the top, I'm saying number 1 was deal with the structures, deal with the housing, deal with the course, deal with the income. So I'm going at suicide prevention from totally the opposite of everybody else, which is telling those people to get into a fight situation, which is not with others, but this fight the structure that has kept them there. So if somebody is stuck in poverty, then it's address that. It's join a group that helps you fight your own poverty. You know, Christians against poverty, Muslims against poverty, Hindus against poverty, everybody against poverty. And go and see your MP about your poverty. Change your environment that has created the negativity that you feel about yourself. And it's never be thinking it is your fault, because that is where the person who is feeling that way has gone wrong in their thoughts, is that they think it's their fault. It's never that fault of that person. Just as like if somebody is an abuser, they're trying to get the woman to think it was their fault. That's the biggest trick in the book, isn't it? Oh, you made me do it, right? Now, how could a victim of abuse have made the perpetrator do it to them? That is the most awful excuse. And so how could, think about that in terms of suicide prevention as well, right? Same tactic. So, look at the poverty and fight that. Change, get. Also, the other thing that can fight poverty is education. Obviously, I was dealing with educated students, but I was trying to save their education, okay, by appealing to get them to continue on that course. So that in itself was fighting for their own ability to be educated out of the negativity. Grasped it, got it, yeah. And then number 9, don't give up that easily and talk it out. Always talk it out. Always find somebody to talk to about it. If someone is feeling that thought, then they want to get on the phone right away, or they want to get out of that place, go for a walk and go and see if they can speak to somebody, or phone the Samaritans and speak to them right away. Don't leave it, and make sure that they get a discussion there. That's what I would recommend. Number 10, if you've got no friends, you're alone, no brothers and sisters, get someone in authority to help. And, if the MP is available, they usually are at surgeries, get to see them, phone the Samaritans, phone, can you get access to social work? Not really, not that quickly. But then, there is a process for that. Go through that process. It won't be instantaneous. Speaking to the Samaritans is instantaneous. Or any other organisation that deals with suicide prevention. Don't be proud on that score. Number 11, which is, I thought is very good, although it can sound a bit prurient as well, when somebody is desperate and they've actually started to think of negative thoughts. Help others out. Yeah, obviously that is a good tactic, because it means that you are getting in front of other people. You're involved with other people, and you can also speak with them about your own problems. So helping somebody out is a good idea, because it ceases the isolation that somebody would feel who was feeling that desperate. And last but not least, which I mentioned before, but I think is very, very important, number 12, adopt coping rituals. Things that allow your brain to engage in positive activity. And for me, when I gave up smoking in January and I was successfully achieved it, I mean, here I am in another January, a year later, I haven't had a sip in it. And I adopted my own programme to myself on that score. And I realised that I also needed, after I had done the Russell Brand 12-point system to give up smoking, and he does it for more serious drugs, and also for alcoholism. Very good 12-point system. Anyway, I used it, it succeeded. But the other thing that I needed to do was meditation in that system. And I adopted that, and I found that helped me in the morning not to think about it. And then I adopted positive behaviour with regard to the meditation, reading the writings of, religious leaders, prophets, all sorts, not just my own, but all sorts of other religions as well. And then also the more generic way of doing it, meditation, which isn't a religious practice. It's practiced in religions, but it can be also just something that you do with your mind in order to calm it and reprogram it to improve things. So there is a cognitive behavioural therapy element to meditation. And I would thoroughly recommend that people get into that, and they do things that helps them towards that. There were other things I was doing. I was using, like, for example, essential oils, which are helpful for changing mood. There's a group of essential oils that help with hormones. And, I would recommend somebody who was dealing with really big issues, wants to break the cycle of a lot of things, then the essential oils will really be getting with things like clary sage, frankincense, geranium, any of the for men, sandalwood would probably be better. But there is a whole series of essential oils that elevate and help hormonal issues, which obviously, if your hormones are down, you're going to be more depressed. So there's a lot of things in the universe that are available to us humans to help us to get through things, and those are definitely one of the things. Also, certain foods help to elevate our moods. It's no accident that chocolate, for example, was recommended. Drinking chocolate was recommended by the temperance movement. They tried to change things away from alcohol, so they promoted drinking chocolate. And chocolate does actually elevate your mood. It affects your serotonin. It raises it in order to help you improve sleep as well. Milk does the same thing. So there are things that can change people's mood, and I would certainly recommend that people check out point 12, which is coping mechanisms, meditation, mood changing things that are not addictive substances. Why people get involved in drugs is because if they feel bad about themselves, they want to remove the thought. So they indulge in a drug that will make them feel better, right? And so you want to actually deal with the negative urge to do that. And you want to improve the mood by different means. Okay, that's the benefit of my advice. I hope people will continue to sort of go with me on these talks and try and see that there is actually a system here that I'm trying to get you to think about, which generally is take action. Don't sit there and do nothing. Okay, thanks very much for listening, everybody. Have a good evening and have a good tomorrow. And, obviously, the death rate from Covid-19 in Britain is very bad at the moment. And people need to keep themselves being positive and positive to each other. So just keep going. Okay, bye for now. Thank you.